All right, this is the Brown Duke Gun Show. My name is JP Garcia, here today, as usual, with Brandon Elias and special guest, Austin Menard. Menard, right?
Yeah, Austin Menard.
Very good. Okay. Today, we are going to talk about travel and specifically what kit do you bring when you're traveling, right? And so, clearly we're all firearms enthusiasts. We're going to talk about what you bring with guns and all of that stuff, but then also take a step back and take a look at some of the other gear that you bring on trips with you from a safety perspective, right? Just, outside of just firearms, other things that you need to look into when you're taking trips, right?
Yep.
So yeah, I think let's kick off there because I think we're all kind of going on vacations here in the near future. I think you guys are in a couple of days, and we're in 2 weeks. We're gone again for 2 weeks. I think that let's just dig in, with a quick trip. Or where do you guys want to take it?
We're going to Florida next week, and so we were thinking about like, hey, what we're going to pack, and like everybody has like their own set of things that they pack for a trip, and I guess what's going to make you more prepared to take that trip on the firearms part, and then also just like everyday things,
Yeah.
So you had something like everyday normal use.
Yep. I think we touched on the firearm basis, right, too, but we'll discuss a little bit about, what stuff you can bring as far as kit goes that keeps you out of scenarios where you might, have to defend yourself. And that's something that not a lot of people think about. Getting right into it. It's summertime, everybody's traveling. Vehicle maintenance, right? It's like kind of step one. If you're not making sure that your vehicle is in tip-top shape to travel with, then you're putting yourself already, 2 steps backwards as far as personal safety goes.
Yeah, definitely. Like all changes, air in the tires, make sure all your tires are good. Make sure you have a spare tire, right?
Know how to use it.
Know how to use it. Make sure you have jacks, because those little jacks that are inside, like little cheap vehicles, like like a car or something.
Yeah, those scissor jacks or whatever.
Scissor jacks, they're horrible. Like if you've ever tried to use one of those, and try to like use it on gravel, right? Like that's the worst. Like don't put it in the driveway, put it in gravel and see if. So you might want to like add a new jack to it. Buy a separate jack,
or at least one of those plates, that you could put under. If you do have to do it on gravel, right?
Yep.
So
that's pretty cheap. Yeah,
or a brick.
Yeah,
or something.
Something.
Yeah, know how your jack works. Used it before. Don't take it out of the packaging whenever the first time you need to use it. You see tons of people that's like, I know where my jack's at. I know where my spare tire's at. Don't know where to go from here.
Yeah.
So know how to change a tire. Patch kits as well. Make sure you know how to use a patch kit if worse comes to worse.
Yeah, I think normal maintenance too, right? So looking at making sure you're. Especially if new cars are easy. All you have to do is keep the oil change and keep the coolant up to a certain level, and that's easy. But if you have older cars, then really kind of making sure you're within that maintenance interval. Okay, have I had it checked out? A lot of times. You guys may or may not know that I had one of those old Land Rover Discoveries, and I used to take that everywhere, right? And it was a gas guzzler. It was old. It was fun and also terrible at the same time, right? And they're known for having leaky head gaskets. And so whenever we'd go to the Gulf Shores from Kentucky, I'd just go to my local mechanic. The guy's name's Luke. Luke, if you're watching, shout out to you. But I'd go to Luke and have him check it out, make sure it wasn't leaking or it would be able to make the trip, right? Because the last thing you want to do, what we're getting at here is you don't want to be, you don't want to be stranded in the middle of the road, right? With a car that doesn't work and trying to get somewhere, right? Especially these days,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So getting a jack, getting your emergency kit. I think one thing I'll add to you guys is, they make those USB battery jumping kits now, and they're tiny. And they're like $100 on something like that on Amazon. You probably want to have one of those too.
Yep. Absolutely. Yep. One of those. Know how to jumpstart a car. Know what goes where.
Right.
That's a good point as well. Is they make stuff nowadays where you don't have to ask a stranger for help.
Yes. Yeah.
So that's a good one for sure.
So I think all in all, I mean, we could talk for an hour just about car stuff.
Yeah.
So let's say our vehicle is covered. What's the next level of kit that you guys are going to bring, on say a week long trip?
Sure. I would say number one would be medical.
Okay.
Because it's a firearm show, but like you're more likely to get in a car wreck or something like that and use medical equipment rather than get stopped and have to use a firearm. Right?
Sure.
Like there's car accidents all the time. Even if it's not you, it could be like another person that's gonna have a car wreck, and you have to stop there, and you might have stuff to help them do that. Right.
Right.
So you might have doctors or nurses there that can help, but you don't know how to use the medical equipment, but you have it. So
Right.
I definitely think a trauma kit inside the vehicle, easily accessible to where you can get to it even while you're driving. So if you get smashed inside the car and you can't get out of the car, still have access to it, to where you don't have to like go dig in the back seat somewhere as far, right? Have it somewhere near you.
Yeah.
So where if you don't have to get out, you can still use it.
Yeah, absolutely. One point off of that, I think you also should have like some sort of road hazard cones or like some sign that if you do have a problem, you got to stop. You just got to put all that stuff down.
Yeah.
You know, and especially in a car accident, people, if it just happened, you know, people are just going to be whizzing by at 70, 80 miles an hour. You know, if you could have some sort of sign that just says, okay, hey, get into the next lane. You know what I mean? I've
Road
seen
flares.
road
right?
flares.
Like road flares are super cheap, and they can be used for multiple different things, like starting fires and everything.
Sure.
They're a great thing to have.
Well, I saw some of those trucker guys. They have those orange triangles that just kind of flip out, and those things gotta have
Smash
to
together.
be cheap. Yeah.
Yeah.
So something like that too, right?
They usually have something like, I think Walmart even has like a kit, like emergency road kit or something. And it has those in it, and
And a
has
first aid kit,
Yeah,
too.
first aid kit
It's
and
like
stuff
this
like
big.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah. The first aid kit's probably like Band-Aids and Neosporin. Like you need trauma equipment. But
Yeah. Well, I mean, you know, getting a little bit more into the firearm side of things, you know, we're already carrying, ideally, you guys are already carrying tourniquets and, you know, that kind of stuff. So
flashlights.
flashlights are key.
Yep,
Flashlights are
handheld
key.
flashlight.
Yeah.
For sure.
Not even just for, you know, because a lot of what we're talking about is road trip centric type stuff. But even if you're flying, because, you know, the kids and I just flew to Chicago, you know, and that was the first thing. You know, we can't pack that many things, right? So flashlight for sure. You know, if you're taking a check bag, at least a pocket knife if you can't bring your firearm. You know, those kinds of things. You know, so a knife is another good one, right? Knife and scissors. I think that's pretty good.
Yeah, because you always need a knife if you can bring it, right? On an airplane, it's kind of difficult, but if you're traveling in a vehicle.
Yeah.
And I like to do vehicles if it's under 12 hours. So that's another thing that people ask me a lot. It's like, well, would you fly or drive? Like usually if it's 12 hours or less, I'll drive. If it's past 12 hours, I'll fly.
Sure.
Because by the time you get to the airport, or where we live is like 2 hours away from the major airport, right? So I got to drive 2 hours, get there 2 or 3 hours before,
Right.
get checked in with the firearms and everything else, and then fly and then get firearms after. So usually it takes like 8 to 10 hours.
Yeah.
You know? So it's like, well, if it's a 5-hour drive, it takes me longer to fly there than it does just to drive there. And I don't have all my stuff. you know?
Right.
So
Right.
Yeah. So I think JP, we're all touching on the same thing of like everyday carry, right? So like talk a little bit about what everyday carry looks like. We talked about medical equipment, but there is like a side of medical that goes into everyday carry. Every class that I teach, learned in, you know, teaching from Brandon, tourniquets, even if it's just one, which is kind of the bare minimum, you should have access to one every day, even if it's not on your person. I like to carry one either, I have them in a vehicle. So if I don't have access to the vehicle, then I'll bring up usually a backpack everywhere. So we'll have access to them in the backpack, right? That's the only big other thing I'd say is probably gauze, and more of it than you ever think you'd ever need, right?
Sure.
Anybody who's ever practiced packing a wound in a trauma class knows that, right? You always need more than you think you need. So bare minimum necessities. But if it is a vehicle, there's no reason not to, you know, have a larger trauma kit.
Definitely.
You should have, they say, you know, one tourniquet for every limb and 2 for yourself. So a 6 minimum.
Yeah.
That seems a little excessive to some people, but it's like, hey, you never know. But Brandon brought up a good point too, is that another thing I stress in the classes is like, if you have this in your vehicle, right? And let's say that you know the bare minimum, you can put a tourniquet on safely, and you can stop a bleed, right? I think if the average American learned that, my statistics say, I promise you we could save like 20% more people from car accidents.
Yeah.
Just from like, hey, look, I saw an accident, I can stop a bleed, right? And then, you know, if there is a doctor or somebody there, now you have the equipment to give them to say, hey, look, I know you know how to use this better than I do.
Yeah, absolutely. Access is the key, right? Because
That's
the
right.
last thing,
Yeah.
most people, what we're talking about, they don't have this
No.
stuff
Yep.
in their cars.
Right.
So even just having it, and but when the EMTs get there, they'll
Yeah,
of
they'll
course
have
have the
everything.
ambulance, but that's 20 minutes.
Right.
Yeah.
The bare minimums to be able to stop a bleed. You're not going to be able to do too much help besides that. But if you have the equipment to do so, and somebody knows how, then you've helped set them up to save somebody's life.
Yeah, for sure.
Yep.
So we've been dancing around the firearms topic. The people want to talk about guns,
Yeah.
right? So let's talk about guns. We're gone for a week. What does your gun situation look like?
I'd probably say we break it down into 3 tiers. The way I look at it is like the basic necessities, and then we'll go to tier 2, and then we'll go at tier 3.
Okay.
The tier 1, the basic necessities, is like you said. Hopefully, everybody watching is carrying a gun every single day. The basic necessities is what you carry every single day. That's a firearm, and a spare magazine, a flashlight, and a knife.
Okay. Yep.
In my opinion, and we covered the medical already. We'll leave that for where we left it, but that's, in my opinion, every single day. So the tier 1 of your travel is firearm, a spare magazine, a flashlight, and a knife. We can go for hours around the fact of whether it should be a pocket knife or a fixed blade. We have this conversation in classes all the time. People say, well, I need a fixed blade in case I need to fight somebody. It's like, hey man, if the knife's coming out, the gun's coming out.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
So pocket knives are perfectly fine, but that's my opinion on the tier 1 gear. Brandon probably might have a little bit different.
Yeah, that'd be the same.
Yeah.
The only thing I'd add is maybe if you're going to be, if you're going to be like taking it off or something, I'd bring a case that could lock.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah. Good.
Because a lot of times, I'm guilty of this. I find myself, I go on a road trip. We're going to see relatives here soon. I'll go carrying. Right. I always drive, carrying and all of that stuff. And so, when I get there, it's like, oh crap, where do I put this stuff? Right. If I had to, take a shower, you got to go swim or do whatever it is you're going to do. You got to take it off and put it somewhere. Yeah. So just even a tiny case that you can kind of hide and secure.
Yeah.
I usually keep one of those in the vehicle because they're pretty cheap. They're like $30 or so for the keyed ones. I always have one like in the vehicle, even if I have the gun on me at all times.
Sure.
Just so if I get somewhere, like you said, you can do that because you don't know if there's kids over there. Right. And you got to take out the gun or something. You don't want to leave it just in the vehicle for sure. Do not leave guns in the vehicle.
Right.
That's another thing.
Yes.
Bring the gun down all the time.
Yeah.
So make sure
and that brings up another point, right? A lot of times when we travel, we'll stop for the night with the kids at a hotel, and my kids are young, your kids are young. And it's like, well, you could put it at the top of the closet, I guess, but then it's like, it's also good practice to have a case that you could put it in so that, it's, if for some reason, even hotel staff comes in there, it's just a case. It's not just an exposed firearm.
Right.
And the last thing I will say, this is just from me, you don't want to use the safe that's in the hotel.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Right. Don't stay away from that.
They got
guy.
access to that
Yeah,
too.
absolutely. That is not a secure safe.
Yeah.
So
being somebody that doesn't have kids, I'll ask the hard question here: is that like on something like you mentioned, like a hotel room travel, right? Where you're taking your gun off at the end of the night. My wife and I, when we travel, like I just put mine in the bedstand, right? No kids, right? What's the best course of action if you want to have access to that firearm?
So
Is there a good answer?
I don't know. I think it's based on kind of your preference, right? What I do is I'll take it, and I'll put it in the closet at the top, like I was saying, and I'll sleep in the bed closest to that, right? And I'll, of course, you lock the deadbolt, you lock all the locks that you can do, because if somebody's going to come in, they're going to make some racket.
Yeah, you've got some time.
Yeah, you've got some time. Like you can go and get the gun and be ready. You know what I mean? The flashlight generally stays either in the pants for me or on the table. Mostly on the table actually, because I don't use it more for security. I use it more to get around when the kids are asleep. I don't want to turn the lights on. Just trying to get around. But that's kind of what I do.
Yeah,
I don't know, Brandon, what you do.
I do the same thing that Austin does. Like everybody knows my kid. So
True. Yeah.
She has access to machine guns all the time. So I usually don't have to worry about that. I just kind of like put it next to the bedside and that's it. And I try to travel with a rifle also.
Sure.
So that helps out,
Yeah.
Same condition as at the house.
Right.
Yep.
So So yeah, okay. So that's firearm like level 1. Okay, so let's go to level 2 then. What would be level 2?
Yeah, I think Brandon kind of just kickstarted it. In my opinion, level 2 is traveling either with a full size pistol, something you wouldn't normally carry. I'm sure there's folks out there carrying Glock 17s with 21 round mags and X300s on it. Good for you, man. I'm not built like that. But for me, that tier 2 looks like traveling with a full size pistol that's not on your person, or with a rifle, either in a pistol caliber or a true rifle caliber carbine. Something small, something that's not 16 inches. Something. So we're talking about SBRs and pistols, pistol brace rifles, pistol brace handguns. Sorry,
anything,
ATF.
Our audience knows what that is.
Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. That's what tier 2 looks like to me, is something that gives you a little bit more meat in the fight.
Yeah. Well, and this can extend also to our sport, right? Where people are traveling with their carry equipment, but then also they've got their gamer guns, they've got their PCCs, they've got all this stuff. Or it could also be where you're traveling to, say, a family reunion, and you know that your cousins are going to want to shoot, and you don't want to go rent a gun over at the local whatever for $50 an hour or whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
You're going to bring your gun, you're going to bring your ammo, like all of that stuff, right? So that's tier 2. Then I think, from my perspective, it's more of the same, right? The one thing I would add to that is that I really like those Apple tags or whatever, those little discs,
air tags,
those air tags that you can put in, and I put those in everything. I'm breaking my security protocols by telling you all that, but I put them everywhere just so that it's like one added step of keeping track of where your stuff is, right? And be smart about it. Put it in a smart spot, right? And I do that for all the firearms, all the firearm bags. Well, I do that for all the bags, really. But I think if you're carrying a gun traveling and it's not on your person at all times, then the best thing you could do is have it in a lock case, number 1. Number 2, have a tracking mechanism. Sure. Right?
Yep.
So what do you think?
So like I really like rifles. If you have the option to bring a rifle in a rifle caliber. I'm not a huge fan of PCC calibers. Yeah, they're fun to shoot and like range stuff, but like a rifle caliber, now you're getting the same size of a gun, but now you can reach out to 200 yards and it's much more effective, right? Like rifles kill people. Pistols do too, but they don't incapacitate people as fast. Right. So I like a rifle cartridge, and having something small, like Austin was saying, it's not really for like using it as much, but like more of bringing it in and out of the hotel. Exactly. Like it's so hard to bring a full length rifle in a hotel, you know? So like my usually truck gun or travel gun is like a Rattler, a SIG Rattler, because the stock folds. So I can throw it in like a duffel bag, and you can bring a duffel bag into the hotel and nobody ever knows what it is, you know? Right. Yep. On an AR, the easiest way to do it is just pop the 2 pins and separate it, and then put it in a duffel bag and then carry it into there and put it back together whenever you get there, right? It's not super difficult. It's just like another step that you have to do. Kind of do it in the parking lot where other people are watching. It's kind of sketchy, you know? So like make sure nobody's like seeing you do that. But yeah, have something small and compact where you can bring it in and out of hotels, and you're not hauling in a whole rifle bag.
Right.
Yep. Yeah. Like don't make it look obvious. Yeah. Is what it is. But yeah, definitely like a rifle to carry around with me.
Yep. So I think.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So I think the 300 Blackout is a good cartridge for that. You mentioned the Rattler. So you got very compact platforms. They make, of course, they make AR 5.56 platforms in 6-7 inch barrels. But unless you're suppressing that gun, you probably won't want to be around when it goes off.
Correct. Yeah. Generally, I think. Well, my take is that if you're going to bring around a rifle, generally it's going to be suppressed. Yeah. Right? You're not going to, you're not going to be taking a duty rifle around that's not, right?
Right.
I mean, so, and it's probably going to be an SBR. It's going to be a double stamp gun, you know, like so.
Yep. Double stamp your guns.
Yes.
So then you got to call in like people that don't know, like you have to call the state or you got to get a letter from the ATF and get all that stuff approved.
Right.
So do all your homework with that and do it once a year. It's good for like a year.
Yeah.
So just like select all the states you think you might go to, right? That way you don't have to do it twice. You just do all those states and then next year you do the same thing.
Yeah.
You know?
You save the email, save the everything, and just
do all
resend
of
it.
them. Like, hey, I might be traveling from here to here from this time. You know, and that's it.
And nobody to at least to date, to July 2024, nobody's ever given me any sort of it's literally just paperwork for them. They're just like, okay, whatever. They don't ask questions. They're just boom, boom, boom. Do your due diligence.
And usually like police that stop you, like we've gotten stopped in different states and stuff. And as long as in the states that we travel in, like South area, they don't really hassle you on it. They don't want to see stamps or anything like that. They're just like, you got firearms, right? Leave them there, and that's it. Not saying that it's always going to be like that, because if you see an out of state tag or something, they might want to question you a little bit more and see what you have.
Right.
But for the most part, I've never gotten stopped where they look at the guns. You know?
Especially if their laws are different, they might want to see what condition the gun's in. So again, it goes back to do your homework. Know what states you're traveling through. Yep.
We're in the pretty far south, so the more north you go, the more careful you have to be. I think, right.
Yep. That's right.
So, as we're traveling across I-10, I think we're
you're
generally okay. Yeah, until you get to California, and then it's a problem.
Yeah, then it's an issue.
Okay, so that's anything else, guys, on the level 2? No, for that. No. So what would level 3 then be, Austin?
Yeah, so that's kind of a can of worms. Everybody's level 3 looks different. Mine personally looks like the same rifle as the level 2. Generally, I've done just a 10.5, 5.56, but as of like today, I'm moving over to a 7-inch 5.56, suppressed, of course. The Brin 2, so the stock folds, so it compacts back in the bag, like Brandon was saying. And then if you have a suppressor that has a quick detach on it, you just pop the quick detach off if it's not fitting in a duffel bag,
right?
Similar to taking the gun apart. So same gun, but what we're working with, and the tier 3 to me is kind of the bug out bag that everybody talks about. Plate carrier with good plates in it.
Right.
So ceramic plates, no steel.
Yeah.
No steel. Steel spalls. So good ceramic plates. Buy once, cry once with the plates. A good plate carrier also goes into that, because cheap plate carriers are not comfortable. Yeah. In that plate carrier, extra magazines is probably the bare minimum that I can think of. Plates and spare magazines. Everything else is up to your imagination, whatever you think you might need. But it's the same kit that we train with day in and day out, so you know where everything's at.
Right.
It's not the truck plate carrier, right? Where you put it on and now you don't know where anything's at because you never work with this thing. What else, Brandon?
I would say like some type of 24-hour kit. So like something to like keep you alive for 24 hours, like water, some type of food, or something like granola bars or something like that. That way you can get to somewhere, right? Like you run out of gas or something on a back road and you got to take a hike somewheres. Like you can carry that stuff with you and still make it there and stay alive.
Emergency blankets,
signaling
tent
mirrors.
maybe. Yeah. Like it's okay. So that's kind of where you're going with it.
Yeah, little things like that. Definitely extra magazines, right? Like extra magazines for the gun that you have.
Right.
I'll definitely have that in there. Make sure all that gear is working and it's good to go.
Right.
Yep.
Okay. Yep. So that's really more. So a level 3, because I'm trying to think of when I would go level 3.
So
right.
The thing that kind of got me from that, I got a story for it, is like whenever the whole Twin Tower thing happened and they were talking about like us getting invaded, right?
Yeah.
Like, we would never get invaded like where they have ships on the side of the coast and people are like coming like D-Day, right?
Right.
I don't think that's gonna happen. But they were talking about like terrorism, right?
Sure.
So what would be a mass chaos? They can like stop the interstate system. Now you got like, look at any time there's a wreck on the interstate, there's cars lined up for miles, right?
Yeah.
And you get one guy out there with a rifle just walking down, killing people as soon as they can walk by, right? So it's like, man, that really could happen, right? Like if someone just, even domestic terrorism, right? That could happen. They just want to start killing people and you're sitting in your vehicle, you have nowhere to go, because if you start running, there's like 200 miles before you, or 200 yards before you hit a forest or something. Right.
Right.
So there's a long way. So having some type of place where you can like
plate carrier.
Yeah, put it on. Like you see that stuff coming, and
Right.
Use the vehicles for cover, things like that. That's what the first thing I travel with a rifle. That's the reason why. So,
Sure.
Yep.
Yeah, the every time I get stopped, on the base, and I lived in Baton Rouge for a while. That was like the first thing I think is like, man, you can
You're
go
stuck.
you can go nowhere.
Yep.
Yep. And I mean, yeah, you can jump off the bridge, but that's a long way down, right?
That's all-
and then still that doesn't help you much, right?
There's wildlife down there that you don't want to be around either.
If you survive the fall, you
Exactly.
know? So that's exactly the same scenario that I kind of envisioned, and playing on to that too is like everybody thinks that you don't need it until you do, right? We have a mutual friend that lives in a different country that we got to talk to for a little while and at SHOT Show. That same thing, right? Like lives in a country where there's some not
War.
too.
It's war.
It's war.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
war, right? For lack of better terms. And 5 years ago, he would have told you that he didn't really even need a gun to protect himself.
Right.
And now he won't leave his house without a plate carrier.
He told me that like
Yeah.
a year before. He's like, yeah, everybody says, there's war and stuff that happens in that area. And he's like, I could walk anywhere as I want to. I'm never worrying about anything. He's like, really, we don't need guns. And now they went to war. And he's like, yeah,
That's a thing.
I need a gun.
And,
Right? Like,
yeah, plate carrier. And so
Yep.
he even made the comment to us that is like, like people are going to think that you're, out of your mind. This stuff never happens. Like people like us that, drive around with plate carriers and stuff.
Yep.
And it's like,
Right.
he'll be the first one to tell you that you don't need it until you need it. And
Right.
when you need it, you better hope you have it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You're better to have it and not need it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
That whole
but
thing.
I think the domestic terrorism aspect of it is way more pressing in today's world, and that's kind of that's why I do it as well. It's like I think that's I want to be able to do something.
Yep.
Right.
And they had it was a British SAS guy. Remember that?
Yep.
He was at a hotel or something.
Craig.
Yeah, and they had terrorism like go into the hotel, and he had all his gear there, and just like started going to work, man.
Yeah.
Yep,
That's right.
Saved
That's right.
a bunch of people. Remember?
I remember that.
Craig.
Yeah.
Craig had Kyle. Craig had
Something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. So it's like it could be that you could be sitting at your hotel, and like somebody decides to do that.
Absolutely. Yeah. So then I guess my question then would be, because from a level 1, clearly I think that's like entry level for especially us three, right? Level 2, I go level 2 all the time. We go to matches all the time, taking care of firearms that are, just extra than my carry gear, right? Sure. When do you guys make the choice? Or are you guys always level 3? Even if it's like a 3-day trip, like
Yeah, I usually
you're
go
loading out.
level 3. Like usually have a rifle with me sometimes.
Sure. And your plate carrier.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like I usually just keep it in the vehicle, keep a plate carrier in the vehicle at all times. But I'll not have the rifle with me all the time. But
Right,
whenever
right,
I
of
travel somewhere, I'll have to take a rifle.
Got it.
Yep. Yeah. Same thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's, so really kind of the recommendation is like get to level 2, get to level 3 and be comfortable traveling around, even a day trip, a week trip, especially for driving, right? Yeah. Going level 3.
I just think that's if you have that stuff, right?
Sure.
Like some of the people might not have chest rigs and plate carriers and all that stuff. So yeah, you just stay in level 2 until you can get that stuff. But once you get it, start bringing it around.
I can totally picture my cousin Mikey now, like, oh, now I have the excuse to buy my level 3 gear.
Yep.
He's like replaying this tape. Like, look at all these things that I need it for, right?
His girlfriend Jess. He's like, look, Jess, this is what we need. This is what we need right now. We need a pair because you need one too.
That's right.
Yep. That's right.
So okay. I think that's a good primer. I think I guess the only other thing to think about then is we've talked mostly about driving. This changes a lot if you're flying.
Definitely.
Right? This changes a lot if you're flying. So let's review. So level one, it even goes to, it's like, are you bringing your carry gun?
Yeah.
Right? Like, because
that's what I usually do is just like kind of stop at level 1 because I don't feel like paying extra for a rifle case and all this other stuff for baggage. So I just usually bring like my everyday carry stuff and it just doubles.
Yeah.
So once I get to that place, I can carry it around with me every day and it kind of doubles as like a home defense type deal and the hotel. You know?
Yeah. So how about you?
Yes, it's same thing. Brandon can attest. I'm not too big on the planes, but
okay.
Well, but no, it's just the same thing. I would, if I did it, it would just be really just at level 1. That the everyday gun's going to serve at every purpose.
Right. Yeah, and I think for me, yes, I go level 1. Sometimes, I fly to matches, so I'll go level 2 for some travel, but a lot of times if the travel is less than a certain number of days, I won't even bring a carry gun, just because it's so much of a hassle to get to the airport early enough to get it checked in. And it's not even so much here, right? Because we're in the South.
Yeah.
But if I'm flying to Chicago,
Yeah.
for example, and then I've got to get that gun back
Yeah.
to Louisiana, that's going to
Here's the
be
pain.
a wild time.
Yeah.
And there are even some places like, I have an aunt that lives in New York. Well, I know I can't bring the gun there,
The greatest thing is that if you have family and stuff, like get a gun from them.
And that's what I do. And actually, my friends and relatives back in Kentucky will be nodding their heads when they watch this one. It's like, I just plant firearms
do
in
that
places.
too. Yep.
And it's just like, okay, this can be yours, but I'm going to need it.
Yep.
Right. And so there are some people who get gifted, guns for a long time that just, like, okay, well, if I'm coming to visit, then.
Yeah, people ask all the time, like they come in with like a Gen 1 shield, like Smith & Wesson shield, right? And like they were selling those things brand new whenever the new ones came out for like $300.
Yeah.
They're like, hey, I want to sell this. I'm like, for what? Like you're going to get $100 out of it? Like gift it to someone,
Yes.
right? Give it to somebody and store it over there. And whenever you go over there, you can use it, right? Like I do that same thing. Like I have family members in Houston, Colorado and stuff. Instead of flying over there with a gun, it's like, hey, whenever I get there, like you have a spare gun. He's like, yeah, I have a bunch of them. It's just like us, right?
Yeah,
Like we have tons of carry guns. So just give you one whenever you get here.
Yeah. And give it properly. Follow all the rules.
Yeah,
You have to do a 4473 with your FFL, all of that stuff. But yes,
Yeah.
you should do that. I do that. So,
Yeah, pretty easy.
yeah, very good. Gents, anything else you guys want to talk about packing, survival gear, your carry weapons, all the way through level 3? Anything else you want to leave the folks with today?
Train with whatever you have. Don't buy it and stick it in your vehicle and think that it's going to work the day that you want it to work. So train it, test it. Like Brandon said, he usually keeps us all pretty on our toes about making sure our gear works. So test your gear, change out batteries, that kind of stuff.
Yep.
Very good. Well, gents, thank you. This has been a great episode. Guys, if you have any questions, hit up the website, sentrydef.com. You can hit us up on all the different socials. And we'll catch you next time.